Hey guys, tonight we're travelling back in time to one of the most fascinating and mysterious trade routes in human history, the Silk Road. Picture yourself walking along its dusty paths, under the vast open sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face as you pass bustling bazaars filled with traders from all corners of the ancient world. The sounds of lively chatter fill the air, blending with the clink of metal and the rustle of silk. You can almost smell the rich spices, cardamom, cumin and cinnamon, wafting from the tents and open-air stalls. The constant shuffle of sandals on the cobblestones, mixed with the bleating of goats and the grumbling of camels, creates a rhythm that mirrors the pulse of this ancient world. It's a world alive with movement, where goods, ideas and stories are traded as much as the precious spices and textiles themselves. You find yourself in the heart of a grand market, perhaps somewhere in the deserts of Central Asia, or by the great oasis towns in the Middle East, or even in the bustling streets of Constantinople or Chang'an. It's hard to believe that thousands of miles away, in places like China, India, Persia and the Mediterranean, this same road was alive with similar sounds, smells and vibrant exchanges. The Silk Road, a vast network of ancient trade routes stretching from China to Europe, wasn't just about trading silk, although yes, it did give the road its name. It was about much more. About connecting people, about the quiet yet powerful exchange of knowledge, culture, and most importantly, tools. Tools that would have been crucial in making the entire operation of the Silk Road possible. This journey of discovery isn't just about the silk or the spices, it's about the tools used by those who journeyed along it, the forgotten objects that made it all happen. The paths these traders walked, the cities they passed through, and the cultures they encountered were all made possible by the practical implements they carried with them. It's easy to imagine the heavy fabrics, the jars of perfumes, the pots of rare spices, the intricate pottery and the priceless silks, each one carefully packed for its long journey ahead. But what of the tools that were used to help trade these goods, to travel, to build, and to survive in such extreme conditions? These tools were as much a part of the journey as the goods themselves, and yet they are mostly lost to time. You probably wouldn't survive this journey without some of those tools. Without a map, a compass, a rope, or even a good sturdy knife, navigating this vast world would be nearly impossible. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Go ahead and leave a comment with your location and the local time. It's always fascinating to see how far these journeys travel, from one corner of the world to the other. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. As you settle in, imagine the weight of the trade goods. Packed carefully into sturdy carts and camels, everything is designed for maximum efficiency and protection. You can almost feel the heat of the sun bearing down on the vast stretches of desert as the coolness of the night air starts to set in. You're travelling with a caravan, passing by the ever-shifting dunes of the Taklamakan Desert, or trekking through the mountains that separate Central Asia from China. Your caravan moves slowly, its pace determined by the rhythm of the land. The camel's heavy footfalls echo through the empty space, and you catch the faint scent of sweat, spice and leather. The night is quiet, the stars clear and sharp against the velvet sky. Now, if you were to look around, you'd notice the other traders around you, each of them carrying something, perhaps a bundle of precious fabrics, or a stack of fragile pottery. But what about the tools they're using? The tools that made their lives on the Silk Road possible? The tools that helped them navigate the harsh deserts, survive the cold mountain passes, and even craft the goods they were selling? We often forget that tools, like the simple knife or the sturdy rope, were just as valuable as the precious goods they carried. They were the unsung heroes of the Silk Road, quietly enabling trade, survival, and civilization. But what were these tools? What were the everyday objects that helped keep the journey moving? These weren't flashy, beautiful items like the silks or the pottery. These were functional, essential tools. Compasses, maps, measuring instruments, and more. They were tools that helped people find their way, build shelters, and preserve the goods they carried. Some of them were so simple, so necessary, that we often overlook their importance in the grand scheme of things. In fact, many of these tools have been lost to time, not because they weren't important, but because they were so essential that they became commonplace. They were used every day until they faded into obscurity. Historians still wonder if there are entire collections of ancient tools hidden away in the sands, buried by the passage of time, waiting to be uncovered. As you continue on your journey, the sun slowly dips behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert. The air cools, and the sounds of the caravan soften. You hear the occasional snap of a camel's rope, the rustle of a trader adjusting his pack, and the distant sound of a flute playing. It's peaceful now, but this peacefulness is the result of centuries of human ingenuity. Those tools, those forgotten implements, played a key role in making this journey possible. And yet, as time passed, most of them vanished. Perhaps they were left behind in the rush to move forward, or perhaps they were simply too mundane to be preserved. The tools of the Silk Road, like the lives of the people who walked it, were ephemeral, fading away as the road itself evolved. You might wonder why these tools have been forgotten. Why after all this time are they so elusive? Why do we still have so many questions about the objects that helped shape the Silk Road? Perhaps the answer lies in the very nature of these tools. They were so everyday, so indispensable, that they became invisible. They were the kind of tools that were used not just by traders but by everyone, from farmers to blacksmiths, from scribes to healers. These tools were the backbone of the Silk Road, and yet they were so ubiquitous that we no longer think to remember them. They're just gone, like the footprints of a traveller on the road erased by the wind. Imagine, though, if we could find even one of these lost tools. What would it tell us? What would we learn about the daily lives of those who lived and travelled along the Silk Road? What stories would these objects tell? Maybe, just maybe, the answers lie in the objects themselves. Tools left behind, quietly whispering their stories to anyone who's willing to listen. The past has a way of speaking to us, doesn't it? It's like an old book half forgotten on a shelf, waiting for someone to open it and discover its secrets. But for now, we'll have to make do with what we know, and what we know is this. The Silk Road wasn't just a path for silk, spices and treasures, it was a path built on tools. Tools that helped people survive, build and trade. And even though they've been lost to time, their legacy lives on in the stories we tell and the remnants we still find. The quiet whisper of the Silk Road continues, calling us to remember the tools that made it all possible. Imagine now, as your journey along the Silk Road continues, you come across a small artisan workshop tucked away in one of the bustling oasis towns. It's almost hidden from view, but the faint hum of activity inside draws you in. As you step closer, the scent of wood, leather and oil wafts out, mixing with the dry desert air. You can hear the soft tap of a hammer against metal, the steady grinding of stone against stone, and the rhythmic scraping of a chisel on wood. Inside, craftsmen, some busy with the delicate process of weaving intricate fabrics, others shaping pottery or forging metal, move with practiced ease, their tools glinting in the dim light of the workshop. It's here, in the quiet hum of these ancient workshops, that you begin to realise the true importance of the tools that made the Silk Road tick. The path wasn't just built on trade and goods, it was built on the skilled hands of artisans who used tools that were simple yet revolutionary. These tools were their lifelines, their trusted companions, enabling them to create the exquisite items that would eventually make their way along the Silk Road. And just as the goods they produced became coveted treasures, so too did the tools they used. Some of these tools are still with us today, while others have vanished, leaving only their shadows behind. One craftsman, a weaver, is sitting on a low stool, his fingers moving swiftly as he arranges threads of silk and wool on a loom. The loom itself is a masterpiece of ingenuity, simple in design yet requiring great skill to operate. You watch as he pulls the threads taut, his eyes focused and intent. The tools he's using, though unremarkable in their appearance, are essential to his craft: a shuttle, a beater, a comb, all carefully crafted to create the perfect fabric. The loom itself might not have looked like much to an outsider, but to him it's a tool of great power, capable of creating the most beautiful textiles in the world. The beauty of the Silk Road wasn't just in the finished products, it was in the process. The tools used by these craftsmen allowed them to transform raw materials into something extraordinary. The same tools that wove intricate patterns into fabrics also shaped clay into perfectly round vessels, and they forged metal into ornate jewellery, knives and tools. And as you stand in the workshop watching these artisans at work, you realise just how much of this world was made possible by the quiet, humble tools that powered it. Some of these tools, like the weaving shuttle, were so simple they almost seem inconsequential, and yet they were vital to the creation of the goods that moved along the Silk Road, bridging cultures, countries and continents. As the weaver's fingers fly over the loom, you can't help but notice how deliberate his motions are. He's not just weaving fabric, he's weaving history. Each thread that crosses over the other is a part of a long, intricate story, a journey that started in a far-off place and will eventually find its way to another distant land. The loom, that simple tool, is the thread that ties the entire world together. It's a reminder of the ingenuity of the people who lived and worked along the Silk Road, creating objects of incredible beauty with tools that have now mostly faded into obscurity. The potter, across the room, is shaping a clay bowl on his wheel. His hands move with a grace that belies the heavy, sticky clay he works with. You can see the way his fingers press into the spinning lump of earth, transforming it with each careful touch. The tools he uses, the wooden paddle to smooth the surface, the small knife to trim the edges, are simple, but they are his tools of mastery. He doesn't need anything more complicated to create the finely shaped pots, bowls and vases that will eventually be traded along the Silk Road. In fact, the simplicity of his tools makes his work all the more impressive. He doesn't need a fancy machinery or modern technology to shape his craft, just his hands and the tools he's mastered over years of practice. The question is, what happened to these tools? The weaver's shuttle, the potter's wheel, the blacksmith's hammer, all of these tools were once as essential to the daily lives of people on the Silk Road as a smartphone is to us today. They were used day in and day out, creating everything from textiles to pottery to metal objects. And yet most of them have been lost to time. Some may have rotted away, while others were likely discarded as newer, more efficient tools took their place. But despite the fact that we may never find these tools again, their legacy remains. The products they helped create still exist. Those textiles, those bowls, those metalworks, that long journey from one hand to another is a testament to the durability of both the crafts and the tools used to make them. But not all tools of the Silk Road have vanished. Some have left traces behind, quietly whispering their story to archaeologists and historians who work tirelessly to uncover them. Take, for example, the metalworking tools. These were the tools of blacksmiths and metal artisans who crafted the jewellery, coins and tools that were so highly prized. Some of the tools used in metalworking were remarkably sophisticated, capable of shaping metal into intricate designs. Yet even these tools, once so indispensable, are now largely forgotten. We know they existed because we have found the remnants of their work, but the tools themselves are often lost to time. Historians still wonder, where did they go? Some believe that many of these tools were simply worn out or lost in the vast expanse of the Silk Road's many environments. Others think that they might have been left behind in the rush to trade, abandoned at some forgotten oasis, or left in the wake of a caravan moving too quickly to carry them. The mystery of where these tools went only adds to their allure, a quiet enigma wrapped in the dust of centuries. You watch the craftsman at his work, the slow rhythmic movements of his hands as he creates something new from something old. And as you watch, you feel a sense of awe at how much history is wrapped up in these simple, almost invisible tools. Each motion he makes is part of a chain that links the past to the present, a chain that stretches across time and space, connecting cultures and continents. These tools, though forgotten, still shape the world we live in. As the potter finishes shaping his bowl, he carefully sets it aside to dry. The sound of his work is a soft whisper in the background, the click of tools on clay mixing with the quiet murmurs of the other craftsmen. It's a serene scene, one that feels timeless. The tools, the craftsmen, the products they create, they all exist in a delicate balance, a balance that has been lost to us, buried beneath the sands of time. But the legacy of these tools is not gone. It lives on in the works of art they created, in the goods that travelled the Silk Road, and in the stories we tell about them. These quiet hums of history, the sound of hammer on metal and the scratch of a shuttle on silk, remind us that the past is never really gone, it's just waiting to be rediscovered. The next stop on your journey takes you to an unexpected corner of the Silk Road, an ancient scriptorium nestled in one of the oasis towns. It's a quiet place, tucked away from the bustle of the marketplace, where the steady rhythm of writing and the soft scratching of quills on parchment create a peaceful atmosphere. The room is dimly lit, with sunlight filtering in through narrow windows, casting long shadows across the rows of scrolls and inkpots. The faint scent of ink and parchment hangs in the air, a smell that carries the weight of centuries. In this place, scribes are hard at work, copying manuscripts, transcribing ancient texts, and recording the knowledge of the world for future generations. They're not just writing, they're preserving the stories, the histories, and the secrets of civilizations. The tools they use may seem simple, quills, ink pots, and sheets of parchment, but in their hands, these humble objects become instruments of immortality. Without these tools, the words they write would have disappeared, lost to the sands of time. The tools of the scribe were just as important as the knowledge they preserved. As you observe the scribes at work, you can't help but marvel at the tools they use. The quill pens they hold are carefully crafted from the feathers of birds, sharpened to a fine point. Each scribe has their own preferred method for shaping the nib, and the process is as much a craft as the writing itself. Some prefer a longer nib for fine, detailed script, while others use a broader nib for larger, more fluid strokes. The ink they use is a mixture of soot and gum, sometimes infused with aromatic herbs to prevent fading. And then there's the parchment, made from animal skins, meticulously prepared and stretched to perfection. The scribe's tools, though humble, are essential to the task at hand. Without them, the vast library of knowledge that travelled along the Silk Road would never have existed. As the scribe dips his quill into the ink pot, the soft scratch of the nib against the parchment echoes in the room. He writes slowly, deliberately, his eyes fixed on the page. The words he's copying are ancient, but the tools he uses are timeless. In a sense, he is connecting the past with the present, one careful stroke at a time. His work is not just about recording information, it's about preserving it, about ensuring that the knowledge of one generation is passed on to the next. In a world where so much was ephemeral, where goods, ideas, and even people were constantly on the move, the scribe's tools were a lifeline, a way to anchor knowledge in place. It's here, in the quiet corners of the scriptorium, that you begin to realise the importance of these tools. These simple implements, quills, ink pots, parchment, are the silent recorders of history. They are the unsung heroes of the Silk Road, ensuring that the ideas, stories, and cultures of one civilization could be carried across continents. And yet, for all their significance, these tools are often overlooked. It's easy to forget that the knowledge we take for granted today was once painstakingly copied, one letter at a time, by hand. But what of the lost tools of the scribes? For all the stories we have from the past, there are just as many that were never written down, never preserved. Historians still wonder if entire libraries of knowledge were lost when ancient cities were abandoned or destroyed. What if there were tools, special instruments designed for organising or preserving knowledge that we'll never find? Perhaps they were lost in the fires that ravaged ancient libraries or buried beneath the ruins of forgotten cities. We can only imagine what kinds of tools might have existed, tools that could have transformed the way we understand history. The most famous tool of the scribe, of course, is the quill. It seems so simple, doesn't it? A feather sharpened to a point, dipped into ink and used to record the world. But it's not just any feather. It's a carefully chosen feather, one that has been crafted and shaped into the perfect writing instrument. The quill's point must be just right, neither too sharp nor too dull. If it's too sharp, it will tear the parchment. If it's too dull, it won't leave a clear mark. The scribe's tool is a reflection of the skill of the scribe himself. It's a symbol of the delicate balance between the writer and the material they work with. The tool must be in perfect harmony with the scribe's hand, guiding the ink across the page with ease. But the quill isn't the only tool in the scribe's kit. There's also the ink pot, a small container of dark, viscous liquid that is the lifeblood of the written word. This ink is a far cry from the modern pens and markers we use today. It's made from a mixture of soot and gum, and sometimes herbs are added to give it a particular scent or to ensure it won't fade over time. The ink pot is a crucial part of the scribe's process. Without it, there would be no writing, no preservation of knowledge. The ink itself, like the quill, is a tool that connects the past with the present. It carries the words from one hand to the next, from one civilization to the next. And then there's the parchment. The finest parchment is made from animal skins, carefully prepared and stretched to perfection. It's delicate but durable, able to withstand the passage of time. Parchment was a luxury in the ancient world, and not everyone could afford it. But for the scribes, it was an essential tool, the surface on which their words would be immortalised. Today we take paper for granted, But back then, parchment was a prized commodity. The scribes' tools were not just simple objects, they were treasures, enabling them to carry out their sacred task of preserving knowledge. As you watch the scribe carefully dip his quill into the ink and begin to write, you can't help but think about the thousands of other scribes who did the same thing across the Silk Road. From the far reaches of China to the heart of the Roman Empire, scribes used similar tools to preserve their cultures and pass on their wisdom. The knowledge they recorded travelled along the Silk Road, from one civilization to another, shaping the world we know today. These tools, these humble implements, were the key to that exchange. Without them, the Silk Road would have been just a trade route, not the exchange of ideas and cultures that it became. And yet, despite their importance, many of these tools have vanished. Perhaps they were lost, discarded, or simply worn out by time. Historians still wonder, where are they? What happened to the quills, the inkpots, the parchment? Did they too travel along the Silk Road, only to be lost along the way? Or did they remain in the places where they were used, quietly fading into history? It's a mystery that may never be solved, but one thing is certain. The scribes' tools, though lost to time, will never be forgotten. Their legacy lives on in the knowledge they preserved and passed down to us. The tools of the scribe, humble as they may seem, are the true foundation of history. Your journey now brings you closer to the heart of the Silk Road itself, the travellers who braved its vast stretches, carrying goods, cultures, and ideas from one end of the world to the other. Picture yourself as one of these intrepid souls striding confidently across the ancient landscape, your eyes on the horizon as you move through the desert, the mountains and the bustling caravanserais that mark the rhythm of the route. You walk beside merchants, adventurers and traders, all of you bound together by a common goal, to traverse the dangerous, unknown world of the Silk Road, reaching distant lands where unimaginable treasures await. As you move with your caravan, you realise that the journey is not just about the goods you carry, but about the tools you rely on. These tools, often taken for granted, are the silent heroes of the journey, ensuring your survival and success. In fact, the journey along the Silk Road would have been nearly impossible without the right tools. They weren't the glamorous high-end goods that would eventually reach the opulent courts of Europe or China. No, these tools were practical, essential, and often overlooked. They were the hammers, ropes, compasses, knives, and saddles that kept the trade routes open, kept the travellers alive, and allowed the goods to continue flowing. It's not difficult to imagine yourself in the shoes of these travellers. The sun beats down on your back as you adjust the weight of your pack, which holds a precious mix of textiles, spices, or pottery. The dust kicks up around your feet, and the call of merchants and the sound of camel bells fills the air. You glance over at the tools that accompany you. Tools that are more than just items to carry, they are the key to your survival. Among your gear, you might find a sturdy knife, a compass made of brass, or a rope coiled neatly at your side, ready for any situation that arises. These tools were the lifeblood of trade, as important as the goods themselves. Take a moment to consider that simple, humble knife, an essential tool in every traveller's kit. At first glance, it might not seem like much, but this knife was everything. It was a tool for cutting ropes, preparing food, building shelters, and even defending against potential threats. A good knife could mean the difference between life and death on the Silk Road. It wasn't just about the blade, it was about the craftsmanship. The best knives were crafted by skilled artisans, sharpened to perfection, designed for durability and function. And in a world where the unexpected was the only constant, a knife could be the most reliable companion on the journey. Then there's the rope. Another seemingly simple tool, but an indispensable one. Rope was used in countless ways, to secure goods to camels or carts, to build temporary shelters, or even to cross the raging rivers that cut across the Silk Road. Imagine the relief you'd feel, standing at the edge of a swollen river, knowing that the rope in your pack would allow you to cross to the other side. The rope, though often overlooked, was an essential part of every traveller's toolkit. And what about the compass? While we now take these navigational aids for granted, the compass was a revolutionary tool for travellers in the ancient world. It allowed them to navigate across the vast, uncharted desert, where landmarks were few and far between. Without a compass, it would have been easy to get lost in the vast stretches of sand, wandering aimlessly under the unforgiving sun. But with the compass in hand, travellers could orient themselves, keeping their course steady even in the midst of the most daunting landscapes. The compass was not just a tool, it was a lifeline, a small object that gave travellers the confidence to move forward. As you walk surrounded by your fellow traders, you realise that these tools were not just about survival, they were about progress. Every tool had a purpose, a function that kept the wheels of the Silk Road turning. Without these tools, the vast network of trade routes would have come to a halt. The goods would not have been transported, the knowledge would not have been shared, and the cultures would not have mingled. The tools were the silent enablers of the exchange of goods and ideas that made the Silk Road so remarkable. However, despite their importance, many of these tools were not meant to last. They were designed for utility, for use in the moment, and many were discarded or lost over time. Some tools, like knives and compasses, were too important to be left behind and have survived in various forms throughout history. Others, like the humble rope or a small pouch of trade tokens, were simply forgotten, lost to time. Some historians believe that entire collections of these tools lie buried beneath the shifting sands of the desert or are hidden in the ruins of ancient trading posts, waiting to be rediscovered. But as of now, many of these tools have been lost to the ages, their stories buried alongside the goods they help transport. One particularly elusive tool that has fascinated archaeologists for years is the ancient traveller's pouch, a small, often decorative bag that travellers would use to carry their most precious items: coins, documents, maps, and sometimes even small treasures. The pouch would be carefully crafted, often adorned with intricate designs, and it would hold everything a traveller needed to navigate the vast expanses of the Silk Road. But what happened to these pouches? Where did they go? We can only imagine the stories they could tell, of merchants who once carried them across the deserts, over mountains, through bustling cities, and into the hands of distant rulers. But the disappearance of such tools isn't just a mystery. It's a reminder of the passage of time, and how easily the everyday can be forgotten. The tools that were so essential to the travellers of the Silk Road now seem almost like ghosts, their forms only visible through the stories we tell. Perhaps that's the beauty of the Silk Road. It wasn't just about the treasures that made their way to far-off lands, but about the quiet, invisible tools that helped make it all possible. As you continue on your journey, it's hard not to feel a certain awe for these simple tools: the knife, the rope, the compass, the pouch. They are the unsung heroes of the Silk Road, carrying with them the weight of history. Without them, the exchange of goods and ideas that made this ancient route so significant wouldn't have been possible. Their absence, though it may seem small in the grand scheme of things, is a gap in the story, a reminder that history is shaped not only by the grand gestures, but by the quiet, everyday objects that helped people survive, thrive, and move forward. And as you stand there, surrounded by the tools of travellers long gone, you can't help but wonder, what else is lost to time? What other tools, no matter how small, have shaped our world without us even realising it? Perhaps they too are waiting to be rediscovered, their stories still untold, waiting to be woven into the tapestry of history. As your journey along the Silk Road continues, you find yourself approaching one of the most intriguing and fragrant corners of this vast trade network, the spice market. The air is thick with the scent of cloves, cardamom, cinnamon, and saffron, each one a coveted treasure that has travelled from distant lands to find its way to the markets of Persia, India, and beyond. The sight of spice traders haggling over bags of fragrant powders and dried herbs is a common one, but you begin to realise that the story of these spices is much more than a simple exchange of goods. It's about the tools, the strange, mysterious instruments that were used to preserve, transport, and trade these precious commodities. Spices were so valuable in the ancient world that they were often treated like gold. A small pouch of saffron or a handful of cinnamon sticks could fetch a fortune, and traders along the Silk Road used a variety of unusual tools to make sure these precious goods were handled with care. From specialised measuring devices to intricate containers, the tools of the spice trade were as varied as the spices themselves. And though these tools may seem odd to us now, they were once as essential to the trade as the spices themselves. Let's start with the spice containers, small, intricately designed jars and boxes that were used to store and transport spices. These containers were more than just practical. They were often works of art in their own right. Carved from wood or metal, Adorned with intricate patterns and decorations, the spice containers were designed not just to protect the spices, but to showcase their value. The more ornate the container, the more valuable the spice inside, and yet despite their importance, many of these containers have been lost to history, their stories buried beneath the layers of time. But the real mystery lies in the tools used to measure and prepare the spices. Take, for example, the small mortars and pestles used by spice traders. These simple yet effective tools were used to grind whole spices into powder, releasing their potent oils and aromas. While a mortar and pestle might seem like a common kitchen item today, in the ancient world it was a symbol of the painstaking process required to make spices ready for trade. The grinding of spices was an art form in itself, and the tools used to do it were carefully crafted, passed down through generations, and used with great care. The mortar, often made from stone or ceramic, was sturdy enough to withstand the repeated grinding of spices. It was designed to be heavy, providing the necessary force to crush the spices into a fine powder. The pestle, a long, smooth tool, was used to apply pressure to the spices, releasing their oils and fragrances. Together, these tools were the backbone of the spice trade, enabling traders to prepare spices for transport and sale. Without them, the precious spices of the Silk Road would not have been as potent, and their value would have diminished significantly. But there's more. Some spice traders used elaborate multi-chambered containers known as spice boxes. These boxes were often made from wood or metal, and designed to store different types of spices separately. The compartments were small, each one designed to hold just enough of a particular spice for a single transaction. The spice box was a highly organised tool, allowing traders to keep their goods neat and accessible. In many cases, these boxes were decorated with elaborate carvings or inlays, making them not only functional but also aesthetically pleasing. Spice traders took great pride in their tools, and their boxes were a symbol of both wealth and skill. As you wander through this vibrant market, you can't help but be captivated by the strange and fascinating tools of the spice traders. But there's a mystery here, one that has puzzled historians for years. Many of these tools, especially the spice boxes and elaborate measuring devices, have vanished. Where did they go? Some believe that they were simply worn out or lost during the many arduous journeys across the Silk Road. Others think that they may have been abandoned when the spice trade shifted to new routes, or when new technologies rendered them obsolete. Whatever the reason, the disappearance of these tools is a reminder of how quickly history can fade, and how even the most valuable items can be lost to time. Historians still wonder, did these tools have a greater significance than we realise? Could there have been specialised instruments, tools designed specifically for the preparation, preservation and measurement of spices that we've yet to uncover? Some believe that ancient spice traders may have used tools that were far more advanced than we can imagine. Perhaps they had complex devices for testing the potency of spices or measuring their quality. We may never know the full extent of the tools used in the spice trade, but the mystery only adds to the allure of the Silk Road. And then there's the question of the spices themselves. How did ancient traders keep such valuable commodities fresh over such long distances? Some spices, like saffron, are delicate and must be carefully stored to preserve their flavour and fragrance. Others, like cinnamon and cloves, are more durable but still require proper handling. The answer lies in the tools and methods used to preserve these spices during their journey. Special containers were used to protect the spices from moisture, heat and pests, while the traders themselves often carried small personal spice boxes to keep their most precious goods close at hand. But perhaps the strangest tools of all were the instruments used to measure the spices. Traders along the Silk Road used everything from small scales and balances to intricate multi-chambered containers designed to hold specific amounts of spice. These tools ensured that each trade was fair, that the buyer received exactly what they paid for, and that the spice trade remained profitable for everyone involved. The tools of the spice trade were as much about precision as they were about artistry, and the care taken in their design reflected the importance of the trade itself. As you watch the traders barter and negotiate, it's hard not to be struck by the deep connection between these people and the tools they use. The tools of the spice trade were not just instruments of commerce, they were a reflection of the culture, the values, and the skill of the people who relied on them. The beauty of these tools, their intricate designs and careful craftsmanship, speaks to a time when trade was more than just a transaction. It was a way of life, and the tools were the silent partners in that life. But, as with so many other tools along the Silk Road, the strange instruments of the spice traders have disappeared. Perhaps some are lost in the dusty corners of forgotten warehouses, while others were simply worn down by centuries of use. And yet, despite their loss, the legacy of these tools lives on. The spices they once prepared, the perfumes they helped craft, and the trade they facilitated continue to shape our world today. As you continue your journey, the smell of spices lingers in the air, a reminder of the ancient world that once thrived along these roads. The tools may be gone, but the spices themselves continue to travel, still crossing continents, still part of the living history of the Silk Road. They have come full circle, returning to our kitchens and markets, where their stories too are preserved. As you continue your journey along the Silk Road, you come to a place that carries the very essence of the route itself, a bustling workshop devoted to weaving the finest textiles. The air is thick with the sound of spinning wheels, the rhythmic thrum of looms, and the soft rustle of silk threads as artisans work their magic. The workshop is alive with the skill and creativity of those who have made a name for themselves by producing the most exquisite fabrics, the kind of luxury that only the elite can afford. The most sought-after material of all? Silk. This shimmering, luxurious fabric became the very symbol of the Silk Road. Its story woven into every thread, its trade connecting the farthest reaches of the ancient world. As you walk through the workshop, your attention is drawn to the looms, the massive wooden frames where the transformation of silk threads into fabric takes place. You might notice the intensity with which the artisans work, the careful precision with which they place each thread in the right position, making sure that the patterns flow seamlessly. These weavers, some of the most skilled craftsmen on the Silk Road, are masters of their tools. The loom, simple in appearance yet incredibly complex in its function, is at the heart of this intricate art form. But as you observe the weavers, you begin to understand that the tools they use are more than just implements of their craft. They are the keepers of a secret, the key to the transformation of raw silk into a coveted, valuable fabric. The loom, though it looks relatively unchanged over the centuries, was once an innovation that revolutionized the textile industry. With it, weavers could create fabrics of unparalleled quality and beauty, fabrics that were not only valuable but highly sought after by traders along the Silk Road. Yet, despite its importance, the loom and its associated tools have largely faded into obscurity. Today, many of the tools used by these ancient weavers have been lost, leaving us to piece together their secrets from the few examples that remain. At the heart of the weaving process lies the loom, a simple frame with a set of threads stretched tightly across it. The loom allows the weaver to create intricate patterns by passing threads through and over one another. The process is slow and deliberate, requiring immense skill and concentration. As you watch the weaver's hands move expertly over the loom, you can't help but marvel at the dexterity required to create such fine work. The silk threads, once delicate and fragile, are transformed into something both beautiful and durable. It's no wonder that silk became such a valuable commodity. The labour and skill involved in its creation made it worth its weight in gold. But while the loom is the centrepiece of the weaving process, it is far from the only tool involved. The weaver also relies on a variety of smaller, often overlooked tools to help shape and perfect the fabric. The shuttle, for instance, is a small cylindrical tool used to carry the thread across the loom. It is passed back and forth through the threads, carrying the silk that will ultimately form the fabric. The shuttle is a tool of precision, designed to move swiftly and smoothly between the threads, ensuring that the fabric is created evenly and without flaw. It's hard to imagine how much skill goes into the simple act of passing the shuttle back and forth. But watching the weaver at work, you realise that it's not just about the final product, it's about the meticulous care taken with every thread, every movement. There's also the comb, an instrument used to tighten the threads and keep them in place as they are woven. The comb ensures that each row of thread is uniform, creating a smooth, even fabric. Without it, the threads would become tangled, the fabric would be uneven, and the entire process would fall apart. Though the comb may seem like a simple tool, it plays a crucial role in ensuring that the fabric is woven correctly. It's a tool that, like the shuttle, is indispensable to the process, and yet it is often overlooked by those who aren't familiar with the intricacies of weaving. Another important tool is the beater, which is used to push the threads into place as the shuttle passes through them. The beater is a heavy, flat tool that is used with force to ensure that the fabric is tightly woven. It's a tool of strength, allowing the weaver to create a fabric that is both dense and durable. The beater's role is simple but vital. The harder the beater strikes the threads, the tighter and more resilient the fabric becomes. It's a powerful tool, and like the others, it requires skill to use effectively. But while these tools are still relatively well known today, there are many others that have been lost to time. Some of the most intricate tools used by the ancient weavers of the Silk Road were likely made of materials that have not survived the centuries. Tools crafted from delicate woods, intricate metals, or even bone may have been used to help create the finest fabrics. But with the passing of time and the constant movement of goods along the Silk Road, many of these tools disappeared, leaving behind only traces of their existence in the weavings themselves. The question remains, what happened to these lost tools? Historians still wonder if some of them were destroyed over time, replaced by more modern technologies, or perhaps buried in the sands of the desert, lost forever to the ages. Some believe that they were abandoned during the great shifts in the trade routes, as the demand for silk and other textiles changed. Others think that these tools were too fragile to survive the harsh conditions of the Silk Road, eventually succumbing to wear and tear. We may never know for sure, but the mystery of these lost tools only adds to the allure of the Silk Road and the work of the weavers who once relied on them. As you leave the workshop, you carry with you a new appreciation for the tools that made the Silk Road possible. The loom, the shuttle, the comb, the beater, all of these tools played a vital role in the creation of the precious fabrics that travelled along these ancient trade routes. They were the silent partners of the weavers, enabling them to create textiles that were both beautiful and valuable. And even though many of these tools are no longer with us, their legacy lives on in the fabric they helped create. The silks of the Silk Road may be long gone, but the tools that produced them remain an indelible part of the story. As you reflect on the work of the ancient weavers, you realise that the tools they used were not just instruments, they were part of a greater process, a process that connected distant cultures, created wealth, and helped build the world we know today. The forgotten tools of the Silk Road may be lost, but their influence continues to weave through history, linking the past to the present in ways that are subtle, beautiful, and enduring. As the Silk Road stretches on, you now find yourself wandering into a corner of the trade that seems almost magical in its allure. The world of perfumes and potions. The air is filled with the sweet, heady fragrance of roses, sandalwood, and myrrh. You can hear the soft, delicate sound of glass being shaped and moulded, the clinking of tiny bottles as they're carefully packed, ready to be transported across the vast stretches of the Silk Road. For centuries, these perfumes and potions have been cherished for their beauty, their mystique, and their ability to captivate the senses. The makers of these fragrances, often revered as both artists and alchemists, relied on a collection of wondrous, intricate tools, many of which are now lost to time. The first thing that strikes you is the sight of the glass bottles themselves, small, delicate vessels that glimmer in the light, their surfaces etched with intricate designs. These bottles, sometimes ornate and sometimes simple, are masterpieces in their own right. Each one is a testament to the craftsmanship of the artisans who created them, as well as to the trade that allowed them to reach distant lands. The perfume bottles of the ancient world were more than just containers for fragrances. They were treasures, symbols of luxury and wealth that travelled along the Silk Road. The tools used to create these bottles, however, have been largely forgotten, lost as the art of glassmaking evolved and changed with time. As you watch the glassmakers at work, you can't help but marvel at the delicate process of creating these tiny bottles. The glassmakers are artisans, carefully heating sand and ash to create a molten liquid, which they then shape into the desired form. The tools they use, small tongs, iron rods, and wooden moulds, are basic, yet they require a great deal of skill and precision to use. The glassblower's movements are slow and deliberate, each one calculated to ensure that the glass takes the perfect shape. And when the bottle is finally finished, it's carefully set aside to cool, ready to be filled with the precious fragrances that will be traded across the vast distances of the Silk Road. But it's not just the bottles that are fascinating. It's the tools used to create the fragrances themselves. The art of perfume making is one that dates back thousands of years, and the tools used to create perfumes and potions were just as intricate and fascinating as the bottles they would eventually fill. Some of the most important tools of the perfume trade were the distillation devices, which allowed perfumers to extract the oils from flowers, herbs, and spices. These distillation tools, often made of metal or ceramic, were used to heat plant material in order to release its essential oils. The oils would then be collected and blended with other ingredients to create the perfumes that would be prized by royalty and traders alike. One of the most important tools in this process was the alembic, a complex distillation apparatus that was used by ancient perfumers to separate essential oils from plant materials. The alembic consisted of a boiling vessel, a condenser, and a collection container, and it worked by heating the plant material to release its aromatic compounds, which would then condense into liquid form. The ancient world was filled with a rich variety of perfumes, each one crafted from a unique combination of flowers, spices, and resins. Some were designed to be worn on the skin, while others were used to scent clothing or even the air in temples and palaces. The tools of the perfume trade were crucial to creating these magical fragrances, and yet many of these tools have vanished, leaving behind only the perfumes themselves as a testament to their existence. But it's not just the tools of distillation that have been lost to history. There are also the tools used to blend and store these perfumes. In ancient times, perfumers would use delicate, finely crafted jars and containers to mix and store their creations. These containers were often made from precious materials like gold, silver, or lapis lazuli, and they were designed to keep the perfume safe from the ravages of time. The jars were sealed tightly to protect the fragrance from exposure to air, which could cause it to lose its potency. Some of these jars were so exquisite that they were considered works of art in their own right, and they were prized by those who could afford them. Yet, like many other tools of the Silk Road, these jars and containers have mostly disappeared, leaving behind only the memories of their once valuable contents. Historians still wonder where these tools went. Could they have been lost in the sands of the desert or hidden in forgotten tombs? Perhaps they were abandoned along the way, discarded when newer, more efficient technologies replaced them. The mystery of the missing perfume tools is just one of many that surround the Silk Road. Despite the beauty and wealth that flowed along these trade routes, much of the material culture has been lost, leaving us to piece together the fragments of history. One particularly fascinating aspect of perfume trade along the Silk Road was the role of potions and remedies. While perfumes were primarily a luxury item, the potions created by ancient alchemists and healers served a different purpose. These potions, often made from a mixture of herbs, spices, and oils, were used for everything from curing ailments to enhancing beauty. Some potions were believed to have magical properties, while others were based on ancient knowledge of herbs and their medicinal benefits. The tools used to create these potions were just as intricate as those used to make perfumes. Mortars and pestles, copper cauldrons, and delicate vials all played a role in the preparation of these potions, which were then sold or traded along the Silk Road. The process of creating these potions was highly specialised, and the tools required a great deal of skill to use. The mortar and pestle, for example, was used to grind herbs and spices into powders, which could then be mixed with other ingredients to create the desired potion. The copper cauldron, on the other hand, was used to brew potions, heating the ingredients to release their healing properties. Like the perfume tools, these potion-making instruments were essential to the trade and the daily life of those along the Silk Road. And yet many of them, like the distillation apparatus and the cauldrons, have disappeared, leaving only a faint trace of their existence. As you walk through the market, you see traders offering bottles of perfume, each one filled with a fragrant elixir that tells a story of distant lands, of rare flowers, and of the tools that brought them into being. The glass bottles glint in the sunlight, their surfaces etched with designs that speak of an ancient, sophisticated craft. You might even catch the scent of jasmine or rose in the air as a nearby trader opens a bottle, offering you a glimpse into a world of luxury and allure. The tools that made this possible, though largely forgotten, are still present in the very perfume bottles they helped create. The legacy of these ancient tools, and the potions and perfumes they helped produce, lives on in the fragrances that still grace our lives today. The tools of the perfume and potion makers may have been lost to time, but their impact on the Silk Road is undeniable. They were the invisible hands that helped shape the history of the trade, the tools that transformed raw materials into treasures, and the legacy that continues to captivate our senses. The scents of the Silk Road may have faded, but the tools that created them will always be part of the story. As you continue to follow the winding path of the Silk Road, you enter a region known for its renowned artisans, the blacksmiths, metalworkers, and armourers who crafted some of the most valuable goods traded along the route. The air is filled with the sound of hammers striking anvils, the glow of molten metal, and the heat of furnaces stoked to their highest intensity. You are now standing in a bustling metalworking workshop where raw iron and precious metals are transformed into intricate works of art, tools, weapons, jewellery and more. The rhythm of the workshop, with its clanging, hissing and crackling, feels both primal and awe-inspiring, a testament to the mastery of those who dedicated their lives to shaping metal. As you observe the artisans at work, you realise that the tools they wield are not just for creating goods, they are the very backbone of the Silk Road's success. The tools used by these metalworkers enabled the trade of goods that ranged from practical items like knives and nails to ornamental objects like gold jewellery and ceremonial weapons. The artisans of the Silk Road were as skilled in their craft as any modern engineer or designer, and their tools played a crucial role in turning raw materials into the precious items that would pass from hand to hand along the trade routes. But as much as you admire the artistry and skill of these metalworkers, you can't help but wonder about the tools they used, the forgotten instruments that helped shape their world. Many of these tools, once as essential as the hammer and anvil, have been lost to history. What happened to them? Where did the intricate dies, moulds and shaping tools go? Historians are still uncertain, but the mystery surrounding these missing tools only adds to their allure. What we do know is that the metalworkers of the Silk Road were incredibly resourceful, and their tools were as much a part of their creativity as their skill. The first thing you notice is the blacksmith's anvil. This simple yet essential tool is a heavy block of metal, often placed at the centre of the workshop. It's where the blacksmith strikes the hot metal with a hammer, shaping it into the desired form. The anvil is the heart of the workshop, the place where raw iron is transformed into everything from horseshoes to weapons. The hammer, which the blacksmith grips tightly with both hands, is used to pound and shape the metal. It's a tool of power, of precision, and it requires years of practice to wield effectively. The blacksmith's hammer is heavy, designed to deliver powerful blows that will shape the metal into a perfect form. But the blacksmith's tools are not limited to the hammer and anvil. There are tongs, small, precise tools used to hold the hot metal as it is worked. There are chisels and punches used to carve intricate patterns into the metal, creating beautiful designs that will be seen by those who buy the finished product. And then there are the dies, tools that were used to create uniform shapes and patterns, ensuring that each item produced was both functional and aesthetically pleasing. The dies, often carved with intricate designs, were used to create everything from coins to jewellery to armour. However, many of these tools, much like the metal items they help create, have vanished into the past. The dies, for example, were often made of precious metals like bronze or steel, and over time they may have been lost or destroyed. Some historians believe that these tools were left behind in the rush to move goods along the trade route, while others think that they were simply worn out by constant use, whatever the reason, the disappearance of. These tools leaves a gap in the story of the Silk Road. What else could we have learned from these instruments if they had survived? Perhaps we would have a better understanding of the exact techniques used by the metalworkers of the time. But for now, we can only speculate. One of the most intriguing tools that has disappeared is the lost mould used by ancient metalworkers. These moulds, made of clay or metal, were used to cast objects such as coins, tools, and jewellery. The process was simple yet effective. The artisan would pour molten metal into the mould, and once it cooled, the object would take shape. The moulds were used to create large quantities of identical items, allowing the artisans to produce objects quickly and efficiently. The moulds were often decorated with intricate patterns, which would be imprinted onto the metal objects as they cooled. Unfortunately, very few moulds from the ancient Silk Road have survived, and we can only imagine the wealth of designs and techniques that were lost with them. Another mystery surrounds the moulds used to create weapons, swords, daggers, and other tools of war. These weapons were prized commodities along the Silk Road, and their creation was a highly specialised craft. The moulds used to cast these weapons were likely sophisticated, designed to ensure that each blade was perfectly shaped and balanced. But like the other tools of the blacksmith, these moulds have been lost to time. Perhaps they were destroyed in the chaos of battle, or perhaps they were abandoned when new methods of weapon making were developed. Whatever the reason, the absence of these moulds only adds to the intrigue of the weapons that once passed through the hands of skilled metalworkers. As you move further into the workshop, you notice an array of beautifully crafted metal items, shiny swords with intricate hilts, polished bracelets, and delicate rings. These items were once created using the tools you've seen: the hammer, the anvil, the tongs, the dies, and the moulds. Each one tells a story not just of craftsmanship, but of trade, of culture, and of the people who made them. These objects, though beautiful, are also a reminder of the tools that made them possible. Without the skill of the metalworkers and the tools they used, these treasures would never have come into being. You take a moment to reflect on the loss of these tools. Though they have disappeared, the objects they created continue to tell their story. The swords, the jewellery, the coins, they have travelled along the Silk Road, passing from hand to hand, leaving traces of their origins in far-off lands. Perhaps that's the true power of these lost tools. They may be gone, but the legacy of their work lives on in the objects they helped create. The blacksmith's hammer, the mould, the die, all of these tools are silent witnesses to a world long gone, a world where the skills of metalworking helped shape the Silk Road itself. The mystery of the missing tools, the lost moulds and dies, only adds to the allure of the Silk Road. As you continue on your journey, you carry with you the quiet knowledge that the tools, though forgotten, played an essential role in the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures that defined this ancient trade route. The metalworkers, their tools, and the objects they crafted are part of the living history of the Silk Road, and their legacy continues to shape the world we know today. As you continue your journey along the Silk Road, you arrive at a point where the landscape begins to change. The open plains are replaced by towering mountain ranges, and the once predictable paths now twist and wind through rugged, unfamiliar terrain. The journey is becoming more treacherous, and you realise that this was once the greatest challenge faced by the traders of the Silk Road, navigating across vast and unforgiving landscapes. The route may have connected distant lands, but the path itself was often fraught with danger. Sandstorms, deserts, icy mountains, and hostile terrain were all part of the challenge. How did travellers of the ancient world navigate this immense stretch of land? Here, at the crossroads of the world, a vital yet largely forgotten aspect of the Silk Road begins to emerge: the tools used by travellers to navigate these dangerous distances. Without modern GPS or road signs, how did people find their way through the vast and shifting landscapes of the Silk Road? The answer lies in a series of lost navigation tools that, while humble by today's standards, were essential to the survival of travellers. These tools were designed to guide the caravan leaders, the traders, and even the occasional wanderer as they made their way across the desert sands and over the snow-capped mountains through scorching heat and biting cold. Some of these tools have survived through history, while others have been lost or forgotten entirely. One of the most important tools of ancient navigation was the compass. While we are familiar with the modern version, the ancient compass was a simpler and more rudimentary tool, often crafted from stone or bronze. These early compasses were designed to help travellers determine direction in a landscape where landmarks were few and far between. Some of the first compasses used on the Silk Road were actually magnetised needles floating on water, a technique borrowed from the Chinese. The compass, a simple yet groundbreaking tool, enabled travellers to orient themselves and continue their journey with a sense of certainty, even when the landscape seemed to stretch on endlessly in every direction. The compass wasn't the only tool in a traveller's kit. As you move further along the road, you begin to see the use of another fascinating tool, the astrolabe. This instrument, with its intricate brass workings and carefully calibrated scale, was used to measure the angle between the horizon and the sun or stars, allowing travellers to determine their latitude. It was an essential tool for those making long journeys across the vast deserts or through the mountains, where the stars would serve as their only reliable guide. The astrolabe, while advanced for its time, was just one of the many tools that allowed travellers to maintain their bearings and navigate through the wilderness. But the true mystery lies in the tools that have been lost, tools that might have been even more advanced than the compass or astrolabe. Historians still wonder about the instruments that were used to track the precise position of the traveller or map the ever-shifting routes of the Silk Road. Could there have been sophisticated methods of triangulation, or perhaps early forms of GPS-like systems that used the stars and landmarks to calculate distances? Some believe that travellers might have relied on a type of celestial navigation, using the positions of constellations to guide their way. These techniques, if they existed, are lost to history, but they leave behind an intriguing question. What other, more advanced tools did the travellers of the Silk Road use, and where did they go? As you continue your journey, You find yourself walking alongside a caravan leader, an experienced traveller who has crossed the Silk Road many times. He speaks little, but every now and then he pulls out a small object from his bag, an ancient, beautifully crafted tool that looks like a cross between a compass and a ruler. You watch with curiosity as he uses it to check the angle of the sun, and it dawns on you that this is a tool far older than anything you've seen before. It's a relic of a time when navigation was both an art and a science, and the tools of the trade were as much about skill as they were about the raw materials used to make them. This encounter sparks a thought. If these tools were so vital to the survival of travellers, why have so few of them survived? The answer may lie in the very nature of the Silk Road itself. The route was constantly shifting, changing and evolving, and so too were the tools used to navigate it. Some tools may have been discarded along the way, lost in the rush to trade goods, while others may have simply worn out from constant use. It's also possible that many of these tools were so integral to the life of the traveller that they were passed down through generations, used until they were no longer effective, and then forgotten. Historians still debate whether there could have been even more advanced methods of navigation, tools or techniques that haven't been discovered yet. Could there have been ancient versions of maps that were lost over time, buried in the sands or forgotten in the vaults of temples? Some scholars speculate that there might have been celestial maps, hand-drawn charts that track the movements of the stars, used by the most experienced navigators. These maps would have been invaluable to travellers who relied on the stars for direction, guiding them through the dark nights and over treacherous terrain. One of the most fascinating and least understood aspects of Silk Road navigation is the role of memory and oral tradition. While written maps and tools like the compass and astrolabe were essential, many travellers relied on their own memory and experience to navigate the route. Caravan leaders would memorise key landmarks, an unusual rock formation, the shape of a mountain peak, the location of an oasis, and use these as their points of reference. The stories of the Silk Road were passed down orally, creating a mental map that allowed people to find their way even without physical tools. This reliance on memory may have been one of the reasons why many of the physical tools used by travellers have been lost, because they were simply not needed in the same way. As the caravan moves onward, you realise that the lost navigation tools of the Silk Road are more than just relics. They're symbols of a time when exploration, survival and trade depended on both skill and ingenuity. The compasses, astrolabes and celestial maps may be gone, but the spirit of navigation lives on in the people who travelled the Silk Road, who used these tools to bridge cultures and connect distant worlds. And perhaps, in some small way, you're now part of that legacy. As the winds of the Silk Road carry you forward, you find yourself in a peculiar yet surprisingly important corner of the ancient trade route, the barber shop. Yes, you read that right, the ancient barbers. While today we might think of barbers as a casual visit for a quick trim or shave, in the days of the Silk Road, barbers were much more than that. They were among the first medical practitioners, responsible for more than just grooming. They were the ones who took care of the health of travellers and townspeople alike. These ancient barbers often performed surgeries, treated wounds, and even helped with dental care, wielding a strange and fascinating collection of tools, many of which have been lost to time. As you step into one of these ancient barber shops, you're greeted by the soft glow of oil lamps and the soothing scent of medicinal herbs. The walls are lined with jars containing powders and liquids, and the hum of conversation blends with the soft scrape of blades. The barber, dressed in a simple but functional robe, sits at a well-worn wooden table, his hands steady as he works. The tools before him are not just those used for grooming, but also for healing. A razor, a small lancet, a pair of forceps. These are tools that would serve him just as well in a medical context as in his barbering duties. But what's most fascinating about these barbers is the range of their tools. The most iconic item in their toolkit is the straight razor, which even in ancient times was used to trim beards and shave faces with remarkable precision. It's a tool that has remained relatively unchanged for centuries, but it was also a symbol of the connection between grooming and medical care. In fact, barbers were once known as barber surgeons in many cultures, especially in Europe and the Middle East, because they were often the first to respond to wounds and injuries. The straight razor, while primarily a tool for shaving, could also be used in surgical procedures, such as bloodletting or even amputations. In the back corner of the shop, there's a set of delicate metal instruments laid out on a cloth. These are the tools of the ancient barber's medical side: forceps, scalpels, and a strange collection of cupping instruments. Cupping, which involves placing heated cups on the skin to promote circulation and healing, was a common practice along the Silk Road. It's hard to imagine today, but in ancient times this technique was thought to help with a wide range of ailments, from headaches to digestive issues. The barber, equipped with his cupping set, would have been just as likely to offer a medicinal service as a haircut. Another fascinating tool that has disappeared over time is the lancet. The lancet was a small, sharp blade used by barbers for bloodletting, a practice that was believed to balance the humours of the body and cure a variety of illnesses. This practice was widely accepted for centuries, and barbers were among the most trusted individuals to perform it. The lancet was small but precise, allowing the barber to make small incisions in the skin. While the practice of bloodletting has since been debunked, the lancet remains an iconic tool of the ancient barber, a symbol of the strange but widely accepted medical practices of the time. Despite the significance of these tools, many of them have been lost to history. Barbers' tools, like those used for bloodletting or cupping, were often made from materials that were prone to wear and decay: wood, bone, and copper. Over time, as medical practices evolved and new tools were developed, these older instruments were abandoned or replaced. The straight razor remains a rare exception, still used today in some traditional barbershops, but the other instruments of the barber-surgeon have mostly vanished. Historians still wonder where these tools went. Were they discarded when their medical use was no longer accepted, or did they simply wear out over time? Some believe that they were buried with their owners, who may have passed on their barbering tools as part of their personal effects. Others think that these tools were lost in the rush to move along the trade routes, abandoned in the hustle and bustle of the Silk Road's vibrant exchanges. Whatever the reason, the loss of these tools means that we are left with only a fragment of the story of the ancient barbers. Their role as healers, surgeons, and barbers is often overlooked, but their tools, once so crucial to the health and well-being of the people they served, are now lost to time. In the absence of these tools, we are left with stories and fragments of evidence. Some of the most fascinating insights into the barber's work come from ancient texts, which describe in detail the medical practices of the time. These texts reveal that barbers didn't just shave faces, they performed a wide range of medical services, including tooth extractions, wound stitching, and even trepanation, a procedure to treat head injuries. The barber's tools were not just for grooming, they were instruments of healing, and their loss is a reminder of how much history can slip through our fingers. As you move deeper into the barbershop, you begin to realise that the ancient barber wasn't just a tradesman. He was a vital part of society, a trusted medical practitioner who played a central role in the health of the community. The tools he used were not just instruments of beauty and hygiene. They were tools of survival, tools that kept people healthy and safe as they travelled along the Silk Road. And though the barber's tools have mostly disappeared, their legacy remains, woven into the fabric of the Silk Road's complex history. So, as you leave the barber shop, you carry with you a sense of appreciation for the unsung heroes of the Silk Road. Those who wielded their tools not just for fashion, but for the greater good of the people. The straight razors, the lancets, the cupping instruments, they may be lost to time, but the role of the barber surgeon remains a vital part of the story of the Silk Road. The tools may be gone, but their impact endures. As your journey along the Silk Road continues, you find yourself wandering into a caravanserai nestled between two distant mountain ranges, where the air is alive with the sounds of music. The echoes of ancient melodies fill the air, carried by the wind from the distant lands. You can hear the lilting notes of a string instrument, the soft thrum of a drum, and the wind chimes that tinkle as they sway in the breeze. The music seems to have its own rhythm, one that syncs perfectly with the flow of the caravan, slow, steady, and ancient. You can almost feel the pull of the instruments, as if they're calling you to discover more about the musicians who travelled the Silk Road, weaving songs that resonated across cultures, languages, and borders. Music, along with the goods that travelled the Silk Road, was one of the most beautiful and enduring gifts of the ancient world. It was through music that people could express emotions, share stories, and even communicate across cultural divides. The musicians who journeyed along these vast trade routes played a vital role in connecting distant lands, and their instruments, like the travellers themselves, crossed great distances, adapting and evolving as they moved from one region to another. But as much as we know about the influence of music on the Silk Road, we still know remarkably little about the tools that the musicians used, the instruments that made these magical sounds possible. The first thing you notice as you step into the caravanserai is the array of instruments scattered around the musicians. Stringed instruments, flutes, percussion instruments, all of them worn from years of travel. The instruments themselves are beautiful, finely crafted, but there's something deeply mysterious about them. They don't resemble anything you've seen before, and yet they feel familiar, as though they've been part of human history for centuries. You notice a strange resemblance between the sitar from India, the pipa from China, and a lute from Persia, all of them linked by the trade routes, all of them instruments that carried the sound of the Silk Road from one civilization to another. One of the most striking instruments is a type of lyre, its strings stretched across a wooden frame. The lyre, a common instrument in the ancient world, is used across the cultures of the Silk Road, but its form varies depending on the region. Some are beautifully decorated with intricate carvings, while others are more utilitarian. The lyre is a portable instrument, perfect for the nomadic lifestyle of the traders and travellers. Its simple design allows it to be easily carried from one place to another, making it a popular choice for musicians who travelled the Silk Road. However, the lyre's origins are clouded in mystery. Historians still wonder about the exact moment and place where it was first created, and how it spread so widely along the trade routes. And then there's the flute. The flutes played by the musicians on the Silk Road are often made from bamboo or wood, and they produce a soft, haunting sound that resonates deeply in the still air. Flutes were common in many cultures along the Silk Road, from China to Persia to Central Asia, and each region developed its own style of playing. Some flutes were designed to mimic the sounds of nature, while others were used to accompany dances or religious ceremonies. But despite the flute's widespread use, its early history is shrouded in mystery. Historians still debate where the flute was first created, and how it came to play such an important role in the musical traditions of the Silk Road. The percussion instruments too are equally fascinating. Drums of various shapes and sizes are scattered across the caravanserai, some made from animal skins, others from metal. These drums are used to create rhythmic beats that guide the movement of dancers, accompany the lyrics of songs, or signal important moments in rituals. The sounds of the drums echo through the courtyard, blending with the softer tones of the stringed instruments and flutes. The drums used along the Silk Road were often portable, allowing them to be easily carried by musicians who journeyed from one town to another. They were as much a part of the cultural exchange on the Silk Road as the spices, textiles and pottery. But again, the history of these drums remains elusive. Where did they come from? Who invented the first drum on the Silk Road? The answers are lost to history, leaving behind only the haunting beats of the instruments themselves. As you sit quietly and listen to the music around you, you realise that the instruments of the Silk Road were more than just tools for entertainment. They were instruments of connection. They helped build bridges between distant cultures, allowing people to share stories, emotions and experiences. The music travelled with the merchants, the diplomats and the musicians, who carried their instruments as they moved along the Silk Road. These musicians were not just artists, they were storytellers, bringing the sounds of their homelands to the farthest reaches of the known world. Through their music, they united people from different cultures, creating a shared language that transcended the barriers of language and geography. However, much like the tools of other craftsmen along the Silk Road, many of the musical instruments and tools used by these ancient musicians have been lost over time. The delicate craftsmanship required to create these instruments, the materials used to make them, and the unique playing styles of the musicians were all part of what made them so special. But as time passed, many of these instruments were abandoned, broken, or lost, leaving behind only a handful of remnants. Some of the instruments have survived in museums or private collections, but for the most part, they have disappeared from history. Historians and archaeologists still search for clues, trying to uncover the lost instruments of the Silk Road and understand the role they played in the exchange of culture and ideas. One of the most intriguing mysteries surrounding these lost instruments is the question of whether there were instruments or techniques that we have yet to discover. Could there have been musical tools so advanced or so unique that they have never been found? Perhaps there were instruments that combined elements of string, wind and percussion into a single hybrid creation. Some speculate that there may have been instruments used only in certain regions of the Silk Road, whose designs never made it to the more famous cultural centres like Baghdad, Constantinople or Xi'an. These instruments, lost to the sands of time, may hold the key to understanding the full scope of the musical traditions that thrived along the Silk Road. But despite the loss of these tools, the music of the Silk Road lives on. The instruments that were used, flutes, lyres, drums and more, continue to inspire modern musicians and composers. The melodies that once echoed across the desert sands and through the bustling markets are now preserved in the music that draws on these ancient traditions. And in some ways, the story of the Silk Road's music is still unfolding, as the sounds of this ancient world continue to resonate through time. As you sit back and listen to the music play out, you can't help but feel a sense of connection to the distant past. The instruments, the musicians, and the melodies are all part of a larger story, a story that stretches across continents and centuries, weaving together the cultures of the East and West in a tapestry of sound. The lost instruments of the Silk Road may never be fully recovered, but their legacy lives on in the music that still fills the air today. As the sun dips behind the distant mountains, you arrive at another surprising yet essential stop along the Silk Road, the baker's hearth. The smell of freshly baked bread wafts through the air, inviting you into a warm, cosy space that is both inviting and bustling with activity. In this far-flung outpost of the ancient trade route, the art of baking isn't just a means of preparing food, it's a deeply ingrained part of the culture, a way of life that stretches back for centuries. Bread, simple yet essential, is at the heart of the Silk Road's culinary exchange, and the tools used by ancient bakers to craft it are as intriguing as the loaves themselves. The first thing that catches your eye is the oven. Unlike the modern ovens of today, this one is built from clay or stone with a low domed roof that traps the heat and bakes the bread evenly. The baker, busy at work, tends to the fire with precision, keeping the temperature just right for baking. The heat is intense, but the result is worth the effort. Round loaves of bread, golden brown and perfectly crusted, waiting to be sliced and shared. But the tools used in this process are what really capture your imagination. The most iconic of all is the baker's peel, a large, flat wooden tool used to slide the loaves in and out of the oven. The peel, with its long handle and flat surface, is essential for safely handling the hot, delicate loaves. Without it, the baker would have to rely on much less efficient methods, risking the loss of a loaf or worse, a burn. Yet despite its importance, the peel is an item that has largely disappeared from our modern kitchens. In ancient times, it was a tool that every baker carried with them, from the markets of the Mediterranean to the cities of China, and everywhere in between. Today, it's a tool relegated to the annals of history, replaced by modern kitchen equipment that doesn't quite carry the same history or charm, but the peel isn't the only tool used by ancient bakers. As you watch the baker work, you notice the dough being kneaded with a large wooden roller. This tool is a simple one, yet it's essential to the process of shaping the dough and preparing it for baking. The baker's roller, used with great care, helps flatten and smooth the dough to the perfect thickness. It's a tool that requires skill, as every baker develops their own technique for achieving the ideal consistency. The act of rolling the dough is as much about feel as it is about technique, and it's a ritual that's been passed down through generations. Then there's the mixing bowl, a large, deep container made from stone, clay or wood. This bowl is where the flour, water and yeast come together, where the dough is first formed before being transferred to the oven. The size and shape of the bowl are important, as they allow for efficient mixing without spilling ingredients. While the bowl may seem like a simple tool, it's the first step in what is often a delicate and time-consuming process. The baker's hands, working with the bowl and the ingredients, create a dough that will eventually become the bread that sustains the travellers and townspeople along the Silk Road. Despite the critical role these tools played in the daily lives of people along the Silk Road, many of them have disappeared or fallen into obscurity. As the tools of modern baking replaced the traditional methods, the baker's peel, the wooden roller, and the stone mixing bowl faded into history. These tools, once so essential to the lives of bakers and travellers alike, are now almost forgotten, their stories lost in the passage of time. Historians still wonder about the fate of these tools. Some believe that they were abandoned as the demand for bread grew, and commercial bakeries with modern ovens began to dominate. Others think that these tools were simply worn out from years of use, discarded when they no longer functioned as efficiently as newer alternatives. And yet, despite their disappearance, there are some remnants of the ancient baker's craft that have survived. Fragments of baking tools, pottery, and even ancient bread ovens have been uncovered in archaeological digs, offering a glimpse into the past and showing just how important the art of baking was to the people of the Silk Road. In some regions, the legacy of the ancient bakers' tools lives on in the bread itself. Some traditional recipes, passed down through generations, continue to be baked using methods and tools that closely resemble those used by ancient bakers. While the peel may no longer be in common use, its spirit can still be found in the hands of those who bake bread with the same care and reverence as their ancestors did. The baker's craft, and the tools that made it possible, continue to live on in the loaves that are still made today. Loaves that, like the traders of the Silk Road, have travelled from one place to another, carrying with them the history of those who came before. As you sit in the warm glow of the bakery, watching the bread being carefully shaped and placed into the oven, you realise that these seemingly simple tools are a testament to the endurance of ancient traditions. The baker's peel, the wooden roller, the stone bowl, these tools were once indispensable to the lives of those who travelled along the Silk Road, ensuring that they had sustenance on their long, treacherous journeys. Without these tools, the food that nourished the people of the Silk Road would not have been the same. And so, in a way, these tools helped build the very foundation of the trade routes, one loaf at a time. The mystery of the missing tools remains, but the bread and the traditions behind it have survived. The tools may be lost, but their legacy lives on in the warm, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread, still filling the air and bringing people together. It's a simple, timeless connection to the past. A connection that ties us to the ancient bakers who, with their tools and their skill, nourished the travellers of the Silk Road. As your journey along the Silk Road continues, you find yourself in a desert oasis, one of the most crucial stops along the trade routes. The air here is hot and dry, with the sun beating down relentlessly. But as you approach the oasis, the first thing you notice is the gentle sound of flowing water. The sight of the clear, cool water is a welcome relief, a sharp contrast to the scorching heat of the desert outside. This oasis, though small, is a lifeline for the travellers who pass through. It's a place of rest, rejuvenation, and most importantly, survival. The importance of water cannot be overstated along the Silk Road, and the tools used to transport, store and preserve it were just as essential to the success of the route as the goods being traded. Water tools, those simple, ingenious devices used to ensure a steady supply of water, were some of the most important tools in the ancient world. From the bucket and the rope to the sophisticated irrigation systems that harnessed the power of rivers, these tools allowed civilizations along the Silk Road to thrive in even the most inhospitable environments. As you sit by the oasis, you begin to appreciate just how much water played a role in the success of the trade routes. The caravans that passed through here, laden with precious goods, would not have made it without access to water. And yet, like many of the tools of the Silk Road, the water tools have largely faded into history. One of the first water tools you encounter is the simple bucket and rope. These basic tools, though often overlooked, were the lifeblood of desert travellers. The bucket, typically made from leather, wood or metal, would be lowered into wells and filled with water. The rope, often long and strong, would carry the weight of the bucket back up to the surface. This simple system allowed people to access the water they needed to survive, and it was used in countless wells and oases along the Silk Road. The bucket and rope, though primitive by today's standards, were essential for gathering water in places where it was scarce. Next, you come across an ancient irrigation system, a marvel of engineering that allowed communities to harness the power of rivers and streams to bring water to crops and settlements. These systems were vital in areas where natural water sources were limited. Ancient civilizations developed intricate methods of channeling water, using tools like wooden and stone aqueducts, canals and irrigation ditches to ensure a steady supply of water for agriculture. These systems were essential for the growth of the Silk Road, as they provided the food and resources necessary to sustain the people who lived along the route. The tools used to build and maintain these systems, shovels, hoes, and even rudimentary pumps, were often made from wood, stone and metal, and they played a crucial role in the success of the Silk Road's agricultural economy. One of the most fascinating and advanced water tools used along the Silk Road was the water wheel. This simple yet ingenious invention allowed people to harness the power of flowing water to perform tasks that would otherwise have been done manually. The water wheel was used to grind grain, pump water, and even power early mills. The principle behind the water wheel is simple. Water is channeled onto the wheel's blades, which causes it to spin, generating power. The water wheel was a crucial tool for farmers and millers, and its use spread across the Silk Road as civilizations along the route adopted it to meet their needs. But what's truly remarkable about the water wheel is its legacy. While the water wheel has been replaced by modern machines, the basic concept is still used today in hydroelectric power plants that generate electricity. In a way, the ancient water wheel was an early form of renewable energy, providing a sustainable and efficient way to harness the power of nature. And yet, like so many tools of the Silk Road, the water wheel has largely been forgotten, its role in the development of the Silk Road economy often overshadowed by the more glamorous goods that were traded. As you sit by the oasis and watch the water flow, you begin to understand just how vital these water tools were to the survival and success of the Silk Road. Without them, the caravans that passed through this desert landscape would have had no source of water, and the cities and towns that sprang up along the route would never have thrived. The bucket and rope, the irrigation canals, the water wheels, all of these tools worked together to create a system that allowed civilizations to flourish in the most unlikely of places. The ingenuity of these ancient engineers is astounding, and their legacy lives on in the modern world, even if their tools have long since been forgotten. But the mystery of the lost water tools remains. Where did they go? Some have disappeared due to the natural decay of materials like wood and metal, while others were likely abandoned as newer technologies took their place. The water wheel, for example, was eventually replaced by more efficient machines, and the ancient irrigation systems fell into disrepair as populations shifted and trade routes changed. The tools may have been lost, but their impact is undeniable. They helped shape the Silk Road and enabled it to function as a vital artery of trade and culture, connecting civilizations from China to Europe. The legacy of these tools, though invisible to the naked eye, is written in the history of the people who relied on them to survive and thrive. As you leave the oasis, the sound of the water gently flowing behind you, you can't help but feel a deep appreciation for the tools that made the Silk Road possible. These water tools, simple yet essential, were the quiet enablers of the great exchange that took place along the trade routes. They were the unsung heroes of the journey, ensuring that travellers and traders had the resources they needed to survive the harshest of environments. The legacy of these tools may be lost to time, but their impact on the Silk Road's history is undeniable. From the humble bucket and rope to the sophisticated water wheel, these tools helped turn the barren deserts and rugged mountains of the Silk Road into a thriving, interconnected world. As you move deeper into the heart of the Silk Road, you encounter a scene that feels almost magical. In one of the caravanserais, tucked away from the bustling trade routes, is an apothecary's stall, an ancient, bustling shop filled with jars of dried herbs, vials of mysterious liquids, and intricate tools of healing. The air is thick with the scent of crushed mint, lavender and rosemary. Shelves line the walls, stacked high with scrolls, manuscripts and leather-bound books that hold the secrets of ancient medicines and potions. You are standing in the midst of a thriving world of ancient medicine, a world where healers, alchemists and herbalists work tirelessly to cure ailments, prolong lives, and share the knowledge of their craft across cultures. The tools on display are not just instruments, they are windows into a time when healing was as much about art as it was about science. The ancient healers of the Silk Road were among the first to practice a form of medicine that blended spiritual beliefs with practical knowledge of herbs, anatomy, and the human condition. Their tools were carefully crafted and passed down through generations, and many of these tools are as fascinating as the remedies they were used to create. One of the most striking tools in the apothecary's collection is the mortar and pestle. This simple ancient tool was essential to the preparation of remedies, allowing the healer to grind, crush and mix herbs, roots and minerals into potions and salves. The mortar, typically made of stone, is a heavy, wide bowl, while the pestle is a long, rounded tool used to crush and grind the ingredients into a fine powder or paste. Though it may seem basic by modern standards, the mortar and pestle was an indispensable tool for the creation of many ancient medicines. The tool's design has remained relatively unchanged throughout the centuries, and even today, it's still used in many parts of the world to prepare traditional remedies. Beside the mortar and pestle, you notice an array of finely crafted vials and bottles, some glass, some ceramic, that hold liquids of every hue. These vials contain tinctures, oils, and elixirs that were believed to cure everything from fever to fatigue. The apothecaries of the Silk Road were known for their skill in crafting these remedies, using everything from exotic spices and herbs to precious metals and stones. Some of these potions were believed to have mystical properties, capable of healing the soul as well as the body. The vials themselves are beautiful, with delicate hand-painted labels and ornate caps, reflecting the care and artistry that went into their creation. But it's not just the preparation of remedies that required skill, it was also the diagnosis and treatment of illness. You notice an assortment of strange tools that are used to examine the body, some of them looking almost like instruments of magic rather than medicine. One such tool is the ancient cupping set, which includes small glass or ceramic cups used in the practice of cupping therapy. In this technique, the cups would be placed on the skin and heat would be applied to create a vacuum. This process was believed to help with circulation, release toxins, and promote healing. The cupping sets, with their carefully designed shapes and smooth surfaces, are a testament to the ancient healers' belief in the body's ability to heal itself when given the right treatment. Another tool that catches your eye is a delicate set of forceps, used by ancient healers for extracting foreign objects or performing minor surgeries. These forceps are finely crafted, with slender, precise tips that would allow the healer to work with great care and accuracy. While modern medicine has replaced many of the ancient tools of healing with more advanced instruments, the basic principles of healing, precision, care, and knowledge of the body remain the same. The ancient healers of the Silk Road were pioneers, using the tools at their disposal to practice medicine in ways that were both innovative and deeply tied to the traditions of their cultures. In addition to these physical tools, you also find scrolls and manuscripts detailing the ancient knowledge of herbs and potions. These texts, passed down from healer to healer, contain the secrets of the plants and substances used for healing. Some of the herbs are familiar, like ginger, turmeric and garlic, while others are more obscure, known only to the traders and healers who journeyed along the Silk Road. These scrolls were as much a part of the healer's toolkit as the mortar and pestle, guiding them in the preparation of remedies and helping them understand the properties of the plants they worked with. The scrolls are beautifully written in flowing script with intricate illustrations of plants and their medicinal uses. The knowledge contained within these pages was valuable, often kept secret and passed down only to trusted apprentices. However, much like the other tools of the Silk Road, many of the tools used by these ancient healers have been lost. The delicate vials, the finely crafted forceps, and the ancient cupping sets have all disappeared over time, leaving behind only fragments of their former selves. Some historians believe that these tools were destroyed or abandoned during the upheaval of the Silk Road's later years, when trade routes shifted and cities fell into ruin. Others think that they were lost to time, worn out or left behind as newer tools and techniques emerged. Whatever happened to them, the loss of these tools is a reminder of how easily history can fade, how tools that were once essential to the daily life of a civilization can vanish without a trace. Still, the legacy of these tools lives on. The knowledge of ancient healing practices, passed down through generations, continues to influence modern medicine. Some of the remedies used by the healers of the Silk Road have been rediscovered in recent years, as scientists and researchers begin to explore the effectiveness of ancient herbs and treatments. The tools may be gone, but the wisdom of those who used them endures. As you leave the apothecary's stall, you reflect on the remarkable role that ancient healers and their tools played in the story of the Silk Road. These tools, though now lost, were the silent enablers of a thriving trade network, allowing travellers and traders to continue their journeys with the hope that any ailment could be cured, any wound healed. The apothecaries and healers of the Silk Road were more than just traders of goods. They were traders of health, using their knowledge and their tools to ensure the well-being of all those who passed through their hands. The tools of ancient medicine, though no longer in use, are a part of the living history of the Silk Road. They were the quiet companions of the travellers, the unsung heroes of the great exchange of cultures, goods, and ideas that took place along these ancient trade routes. Though many of the tools are lost, their impact remains, woven into the very fabric of the Silk Road's legacy. As you continue your journey along the Silk Road, you come across yet another fascinating stop, this time a quiet healer's tent, tucked away just off the main trading route. The tent is small but well maintained, filled with an air of tranquility that stands in stark contrast to the chaotic buzz of the marketplace. Inside, the soft flicker of a lamp illuminates shelves lined with jars containing dried herbs, bottles of strange concoctions, and even more mysterious vials whose contents you can't quite identify. The healer, an older woman with a serene expression, moves carefully about her space, preparing remedies from her collection of ancient tools. This healing space is both a sanctuary and a workshop where the tools of the healer's trade work together to cure ailments, soothe discomforts and restore health. It's in this very setting that you realise just how integral the tools of ancient medicine were to the survival and well-being of travellers across the Silk Road. The remedies and potions created here were a lifeline, enabling long journeys to continue and ensuring that those who ventured into the unknown could heal when illness or injury struck. The first tool that catches your eye is an intricately carved mortar and pestle, an essential implement for any ancient apothecary or healer. As the healer grinds dried herbs into a fine powder, you can almost feel the years of tradition in each stroke. These ancient mortars and pestles were often made from materials like stone, marble or wood, each chosen for its ability to withstand repeated use and provide a sturdy surface for grinding. The motion of grinding the herbs over and over was a meditative one, with the healer's hands moving rhythmically, turning raw, natural materials into potent medicines. The mortar and pestle, while simple, were indispensable for creating salves, tinctures and medicines, and they remained central to the art of healing for centuries. You take a closer look at the jars on the shelves, many of which are filled with concoctions of unknown origin, strange mixtures of roots, flowers and powders. These are the potions that healers on the Silk Road used to treat various ailments. Some jars contain vibrant, brightly coloured liquids. Others are filled with dark, earthy powders that have been carefully measured and prepared. Many of these potions, you learn, were made from ingredients that came from the farthest reaches of the known world. Ginseng from China, saffron from Persia, and frankincense from Arabia. The ingredients were often combined in specific proportions, with some of them believed to possess healing properties that went beyond the physical. For many travellers, these potions were both a cure and a way to ward off the weariness of the long journey ahead. The healer's shelves are filled with vials that contain rare oils and tinctures, some of them created through complex methods of distillation that date back thousands of years. The distillation apparatus is an elegant piece of engineering made of copper or ceramic, with a long spout that directs the liquid into carefully crafted bottles. These distillation tools were used to extract the pure essence of plants, herbs and flowers, transforming them into potent medicinal liquids. The process was slow and delicate, requiring patience and precision. With the right tools, healers could capture the most powerful properties of the plants they worked with, whether for physical healing or for the creation of perfumes and other aromatic substances. But the mystery lies in the tools that have been lost. As you continue to wander through the healer's tent, you begin to wonder about the tools that are no longer in use, the tools that have vanished over time. Many of the tools used by these ancient healers, like the distillation apparatus, the measuring instruments, and the specialised tools used to create. Ointments are no longer part of the healing practices we use today. What happened to these tools? Were they replaced by more modern equipment, or did they simply fade into obscurity as the art of healing evolved? And where did these lost tools go, or historians believe they were discarded when newer, more efficient methods of medicine emerged, while others speculate that they were simply lost during the shifting tides of trade and conquest? One of the most intriguing lost tools is the ancient pill roller, a small wooden tool used to shape medicinal powders into pills or tablets. This seemingly mundane tool was essential for the creation of solid medicine, which could be easily transported and ingested by travellers along the Silk Road. The pill roller was used by apothecaries and healers to create consistent, compact doses of medicine that could be consumed by those in need. The tool was simple, but its role in the medicine-making process was vital. Sadly, like many other tools of ancient medicine, the pill roller has disappeared from history, its legacy only hinted at through the remnants of ancient pharmaceutical practices. Then there's the strange practice of bloodletting. Ancient healers along the Silk Road were known for using tools like leeches, lancets, and other sharp implements to perform this procedure, believed to release harmful humours from the body and restore balance. The lancet, a small sharp blade used to make precise incisions in the skin, was once an essential tool in the healer's kit. Although bloodletting is no longer practiced today, the lancet remains a symbol of an earlier era of medicine. The mystery of why this practice was so widely accepted despite its questionable efficacy is a fascinating one. And yet, despite the tools that were once used to carry out these procedures, the lancet is just another artefact of a time that is now lost to history. As you stand there surrounded by the tools of the healer's trade, you begin to appreciate the skill and knowledge that went into the creation of these potions, remedies, and medical tools. The lost tools of the ancient healers are part of the larger story of the Silk Road, a story of cultural exchange, innovation, and survival. While many of these tools have vanished, their influence continues to be felt. The herbal knowledge, the distillation techniques, and even the very concept of healing, passed down from healer to healer, have shaped modern medicine in ways we may not even fully understand. It's not just the tools themselves that matter, but the practices and traditions they represent. The legacy of these lost tools lives on in the practices of modern medicine, where we still rely on the principles of herbal remedies, the understanding of the body's natural healing process, and the importance of patient care. While the tools may no longer be in use, the wisdom of those ancient healers continues to inform and inspire the way we approach health and wellness today. And in this way, the story of the tools of healing on the Silk Road is far from over. Their influence continues quietly and subtly, weaving its way through the very fabric of our medical traditions. As you leave the healer's tent, the faint scent of herbs still lingering in the air, you feel a deep sense of respect for the ancient tools that once helped heal the sick and soothe the weary. Though many of these tools have been lost, their legacy remains a powerful thread in the tapestry of the Silk Road, a thread that connects the past to the present and reminds us of the healing wisdom passed down through the centuries. As your journey along the Silk Road nears its end, you stop for a moment to take in the vastness of what you've experienced. The road has carried you through diverse landscapes, from bustling cities to quiet oases, and you've encountered countless tools that were once the unsung heroes of trade, survival, and cultural exchange. These tools, many of which have been lost to time, played pivotal roles in shaping the course of history along the Silk Road. Yet, as you reflect on the journey, one question lingers in your mind. What remains of these tools, and how have they influenced the world we live in today? The tools of the Silk Road were as diverse as the cultures they connected, some simple, some intricate, but all essential to the survival and success of the travellers, merchants, and artisans who relied on them. From the humble bucket and rope used to gather water to the fine instruments of metalworking, weaving and healing, these tools enabled the movement of goods, ideas and cultures across vast distances. They were not just objects, they were the threads that connected the disparate parts of the ancient world, allowing civilizations to share their knowledge, trade their wares, and learn from each other. Yet despite their importance, many of these tools have disappeared. Some were abandoned along the trade routes, left behind as newer technologies replaced them. Others simply wore out, discarded as the world moved on to more efficient methods. The winds of time and the shifting tides of history have claimed these tools, and only fragments remain. Broken pottery, rusted metal fragments, and ancient manuscripts that offer glimpses into the past but not the full story. As you walk through a quiet market in a city that once thrived as a hub along the Silk Road, you can't help but wonder about the lost tools, the mortar and pestles of ancient apothecaries, the compasses and astrolabes that guided travellers through vast deserts, the moulds and dyes that shaped the goods traded along the route. Where did they go? What happened to them? Historians and archaeologists have spent centuries trying to uncover the lost tools of the Silk Road, but the process is slow. Every now and then a fragment is uncovered, an ancient coin, a rusted knife, a broken loom, but the full picture remains elusive. What we do know is that these tools were vital to the functioning of the Silk Road, allowing people to work, trade, heal and survive in environments that were often harsh and unforgiving. Without these tools, the road would not have been the vibrant, interconnected trade route that it was. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is the loss of the more intricate tools that were so specialised that they have left little trace behind. The musical instruments, the complex navigation devices, the highly specialised medical tools, where did they go? It's possible that they were simply lost to time, left behind as travellers moved on or as trade routes shifted. Or perhaps they were discarded in the chaos of empire building, forgotten in the wake of the rise and fall of great civilizations. What we do know is that the absence of these tools creates a gap in our understanding of the Silk Road and the cultures that thrived along it. But even though so many tools have been lost, their legacy endures. The essence of these tools, the knowledge, the craftsmanship, the ingenuity, continues to resonate through the centuries. Modern technologies may have replaced the tools of the ancient world, but the principles that guided their creation are still with us today. the designs of ancient tools, from the loom to the compass, have influenced the development of modern machinery and engineering. The healing practices and remedies that were once created using simple tools are still echoed in our understanding of medicine and wellness. The ancient art of navigation, perfected with basic instruments like the compass and the astrolabe, laid the foundation for the global navigation systems we rely on today. As you stand in the shadow of an ancient city once teeming with travellers, you realise that the Silk Road's greatest legacy isn't just the goods that passed along it, it's the tools that enabled that exchange. These tools were more than just objects. They were the silent enablers of progress, facilitating the movement of ideas, cultures, and goods that shaped the world. And even though many of these tools have been lost, their impact is still felt today. The tools of the Silk Road may have disappeared, but their story is far from over. Every time you pick up a modern tool, whether it's a pen, a map, or a musical instrument, you're holding a piece of the ancient past. The threads of the Silk Road are still woven into our everyday lives, connecting us to the civilizations that came before us. As you leave the bustling city behind, your mind is filled with the echoes of the past, of the tools that built the Silk Road and the people who relied on them. The story of these tools may have ended, but their legacy lives on in the way we work, create, and connect with one another. The tools may be gone, but their impact remains, woven into the very fabric of our world. Now, as the sun sets on your journey, you find yourself reflecting on the road you've travelled and the tools that helped shape its story. The silence of the desert is only interrupted by the soft rustle of wind, carrying with it the faint whispers of ancient craftsmen, healers and travellers who once moved along the Silk Road. Their tools may have been lost, but their legacy is alive and well, continuing to guide us one step at a time into the future. Sweet dreams.